Okay.
That'll be fine. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all having a pleasant week. I hope it's been a productive and positive week for you all. Last Monday the 10th of August, I delivered the first of my lectures in which I spoke to you about how to plan a short story. Planning is, of course, very important. We spoke about brainstorming for ideas, devising plots, and then planning, basing our plan on what we had thought about and what we had devised. We also spoke about how it is often helpful to have an inspiration to help us build ideas in our own minds and to encourage our creativity. Today, I'm going to take you through a story. It's a story that I have written. It is a story which I will tell you a bit more about it in just a sec. But while it may not be the most original or interesting story in the world, I hope it gives you some sense of structure, of a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's the key thing, really, because that's what a story needs. It's also important to remember that every story, I would say the vast majority of stories are written in either the first person or the third person. The first person means it is written with the voice I. I tell my story about what happened to me. It is told through the point of view of one person who sees the world in a specific way and who observes things and encounters other individuals, other characters in a different way. A third person narrative tells it from he or she, from the point of view of him or her. He or she is the hero or heroine of the story. And there is, perhaps one could say, there's a bit more distance between the narrator and the third person narrative. I'll tell you about the story that I'm going to present to you in just a sec. Before I do so, however, I would like to take you through some very important storytelling tools, which will be crucial for you to understand the language and the grammar that I'm using in the short story. I should also say, before I show you the storytelling tools, that no one is ever too old to use the Oxford English Dictionary. So I would recommend having one with you, maybe when you sit down to write your own short story, just so you can look up new words, or you can be sure of what a word means to make the language really interesting and compelling. Okay, without more ado, I will move on to the storytelling tools. Okay, this may be very basic to many of you, but it's worth repeating things, just being clear in our own minds what these words mean. A noun. A noun is a word used to identify any class or people, places or things. Table, house, river. Okay. The vast majority of things that we talk about are nouns. A verb is a doing word, to do, to read, to write, etc. An adjective, a describing word, cold, hot, soft, etc. Here we have the comparative form of the adjective, used to describe a noun being more or less than another noun. I've given here the example, the bear was bigger than the man. Yesterday was hotter than today. Usually with the comparative, we have er. It's a useful thing to remember. The superlative, okay, used to describe the maximum or the greatest extent that an adjective can be. She was the coolest and prettiest girl in the school. Again, very distinctive. We normally have the superlative normally ends in ust, E-S-T. Very useful for describing extreme things, something which is extremely the case. Adverb, an adjective that describes a verb. Coldly, warmly, gently, etc. An abstract noun. Okay, we spoke about nouns earlier. An abstract noun is a noun that is not a concrete object or thing. Okay, I've suggested here imagination, strength, joy, etc. These are nouns that we cannot see or touch, but they are nouns nonetheless. They are things. They are things that exist in the world that we are aware of. Metaphor. Metaphor. A metaphor is a description which states that a noun is another noun. The example I've given here is, the river was a dazzling mirror in which I could see my reflection. The river was a dazzling mirror in which I could see my reflection. The river is not literally a dazzling mirror in which I could see my reflection, but for the purpose of description, to emphasize the beauty of the river, the brightness of the light on the river, to describe it as a dazzling mirror is more emphatic. It provides a more beautiful, intense description of what you're describing. A metaphor is not to be confused with a simile. A simile is a description which states that a noun is like or similar to another noun. E.g., my love is like a red, red rose. That is from a poem by the Scottish poet Robbie Burns. There are many, many more that I could think of. I will, of course, be showing you some examples of similes in the story that I tell you. An idiom. Okay, the English language is very rich in idioms. An idiom is a literary phrase or expression which captures certain themes or emotions. Okay, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's an idiom. It expresses certain emotions or ideas in a more human way than perhaps a more analytical description would. So idioms are very important for capturing human emotion, evoking emotion, evoking how people feel about different things they encounter in the world. Alliteration. Alliteration is a literary device in which we use words beginning with the same letter or containing similar sounds. I've chosen Desperate Dan and the Vile Victorians. So you have the alliteration of D and D and V and V. There are so many, and some of us do them a lot in our day-to-day speech. Alliteration is something I will explore in my short story. I've got a few more things. Yes, here we are. The storytelling tools also include certain phrases, which I'd like you to be aware of in advance. On the one hand, but on the other hand, not only, but also, either something or something else, neither that nor that. What all of these clauses and sentence constructions provide us with is a way to distinguish between two separate things. On the one hand, Sarah was very tired, but on the other hand, she really needed to get her homework done. We use it to emphasize a conflict, perhaps, or the existence of two realities which might clash with each other. I'm sure it's something that we can explore. We will explore it in this story, and I'm sure you may well have explored it in some of your writing. So without any more time being wasted, I will move on to my short story. Before I begin, I'd like to tell you, I'd like to just preface that it is told in the third person. It is told from the point of view of the main character. I have not told it as a first person narrative. I have told it as part of the third person narrative. Perhaps when you write your story, you can tell it from the first person. Okay, off we go. It is called Lost in the Woods, and I made the story up. Maybe you can improve on it. Who knows? Okay, it was a Thursday evening in September, and Richard was walking home after a long school day. Okay, It was a Thursday evening in September. I have set the scene. Thursday evening, a day of the week, a time of the day, and a month of the year. I could have said it was 5 o'clock on Thursday evening, September. I think that might have made the sentence a bit too long, but I think it's good to begin your story with a very definite place in time, if you can. Obviously, it's not compulsory, but it's often helpful. And Richard, okay, Richard, I have made my main hero a boy. Your hero could be a heroine called Rachel. It does not matter. And Richard does not have to look like this young fellow here. He is just an example. But he is the main character. I have named him in the first sentence. Again, that's not essential. But I think it's helpful when you're relatively new to writing a short story to state who your main character is as soon as you can. Okay. As he walked out of the school gates, he could not stop worrying about the maths homework that Mr. Pearson had set him for the following morning. Not only was maths the subject which Richard found most difficult, but Mr. Pearson was also his least favourite teacher. Okay, this is Mr. Pearson. Mr. Pearson, of course, does not have to look like this. You must use your imaginations to imagine Mr. Pearson. He could be a completely different looking person. Not only, so remember we have the emphasis, not only was math a subject which Richard found most difficult, but also, in other words, not only is Richard having difficulty because of maths, but the teacher who teaches him maths is also his least favorite teacher. So we have poor Richard, who's compounded by two problems: his difficulty with maths and his difficult relationship with Mr. Pearson. Wanting to walk alone, Richard chose the route that passed by the perilous woods. His mum had told him many times that the woods were dangerous, but Richard was bored of the same journey back and forth to and from school. Wanting to walk alone, wanting present continuous, wanting to walk alone. I think that's a nice way to begin a sentence. It's a bit easier than saying Richard wanted to walk alone, so he chose the route home that passed by the perilous woods. Wanting to walk alone, there's a certain liberty we have in the English language whereby we can use verbs in the present continuous without actually giving them as active verbs. And I think it's a nice way of opening the sentence. It flows fairly easily. The perilous woods. Okay, this is not alliteration, but I have given the woods a name: perilous woods. They are perilous is a wonderful old-fashioned word meaning dangerous. So it's an old-fashioned adjective related to the noun. Again, the old-fashioned noun peril. Peril is an archaic word, an old word for danger or threat. Perilous woods. The woods are frightening. And notice I put the title of the woods in capital letters, capital P, capital W. If you're naming a place, if the place has a name, regardless whether that's a city, a forest, a park, a country, a region, you must always spell it with capital letters in English. Perilous woods are spelled with capital letters. Okay, I want to create a sense of tension. His mum had told him many times the woods were dangerous. Richard, don't go in the woods, they're dangerous. But Richard is a bit naughty. He's a bit disobedient, and he is bored of the same journey back and forth, to and from. This is a useful phrase, back and forth, to and from. The journey there and the journey back. I think this phrase captures the repetitive, boring nature of the school, the walk to school, the same streets, the same sights on the way to school. And Richard is bored. He wants to change things, and he's curious about the perilous woods, partly because his mother has said, don't go in there. As Richard approached the woods, two figures emerged stealthily from behind him. Richard sighed, for Nick and Andy had followed him from school to torment him. Nasty Nick and Angry Andy, as Richard called them, were in the year above Richard at school and enjoyed tormenting him. Okay, you may imagine the characters differently. This is just an appropriate picture. Stealthily. As Richard approached the woods, two figures emerged stealthily from behind him. Stealthily is an adverb. It is the adverb of stealthy. Stealthy is an adjective meaning quietly, quickly, in a menacing manner, stealthily, without making a sound. The verb, the adjective stealthy, might put us in mind of a creature of prey, perhaps a tiger or a leopard, stealthily creeping up on its prey. So here we have these two sinister characters, these two bullies, stealthily, in a quiet, sinister way, creeping up behind Richard. Richard sighed, for he knew that these two had come to torment him. To torment, quite a strong verb. To torment is to cause someone torment, to cause someone great distress, to mock, to make fun of, to be unkind, to be truly nasty, to make someone's life very difficult. To torment. Torment can be an abstract noun as well, to cause him torment, but here I'm using it as a verb, to torment him. Nasty Nick and Angry Andy. Okay, this is alliteration. Now, Richard has given them these nicknames because he doesn't like them. Nasty Nick and Angry Andy. So we have, I'm also pleased to say that I've managed to get the AN for Angry and Andy. Perhaps the Nasty Nick doesn't work so well, but you have the N and N. That's a very useful, that's quite a nice thing to bring in. It adds a little bit of literary creativity. Perhaps it's quite funny. There's a comedic aspect to it. But it depends what you want to achieve when you're writing your short story. Okay. Going home to see your mummy now, Richard, sneered Nasty Nick. It's none of your business. Leave me alone, shouted Richard. What's in your backpack? Asked Angry Andy. Oi, don't walk away from me. Angry Andy grabbed Richard's backpack, pulling it off his back. Give it back, Angry Andy, cried Richard in desperation. The two bullies were laughing now as they undid the zip of Richard's bag and started taking his books and pencil case out of his bag. Then Richard saw red. With a great cry, he hurled himself at Angry Andy and pushed him to the ground. Nasty Nick was so surprised that, at first, he did nothing. Okay, sneered. Going home to see your mummy now, Richard, sneered Nasty Nick. So sneered, to sneer is to say something in a mocking way. It's what we might associate with a school bully. Picking on Richard, mocking him, demeaning him by implying that he is babyish. Going to see home to your mummy now, Richard, he sneered. It's none of your business, leave me alone. Aha, don't, what's in your backpack? Perhaps we could suggest that Angry Andy is the more aggressive of the two. Oi, oi. Well, oi is rather rude, but oi, it captures his character. Hey, oi, these words don't mean anything. These are expressions that we always use. And I think they capture emotion and mood quite effectively. Grab Richard's backpack, give it back. And here we have the scene. So as you can imagine, the backpack being unzipped and the books being pulled out, poured onto the ground. A very common form of bullying, perhaps. And here we have an idiom, a wonderful old-fashioned idiom. Then Richard saw red. If I see red, or if you see red, it means you become suddenly very angry. It's an idiom because red is the color of anger. Red is the color of rage, losing one's temper. Richard saw red. Another phrase associated with this might be a red mist descended. Richard saw red. He became very angry. He lost his temper. He's been picked on for too long. He's had enough. He's had enough of these two bullying him. With a great cry, he hurled himself at angry Andy. Hurled. To hurl, that's a strong verb. If you hurl something, you throw it like that with great violence. He hurled himself at angry Andy and pushed him to the ground. It's a more emphatic verb than threw. I think hurled is more interesting. He hurled himself at angry Andy and pushed him to the ground. Nasty Nick was so surprised that at first he did nothing. Shocked. So shocked that, to begin with, at first, he didn't know what to do. Oh, Richard's fighting back. It's my bag, shouted Richard, putting the books and pencil case back in. Angry Andy was on his feet again. And he was indeed very angry this time. There he is. You little squirt. I'll beat you black and blue for this, shouted Andy. At this point, Richard ran as fast as he could, with angry Andy and Nasty Nick in hot pursuit. Richard fled from his pursuers onto the path that led into the perilous woods. He could hear their angry shouts and heavy breaths as they chased him, so he kept running. He feared that his heart would burst, but he pushed on into the heart of the perilous woods. Okay then. Angry Andy was on his feet again, and he was indeed very angry this time. Indeed is a very important word. We use this for emphasis. It is indeed the case. He was indeed very angry. So what I've done here is I've drawn attention to that adjective angry. Angry by name, angry by nature. Having been pushed over by Richard, he is especially angry. He is indeed very angry. He's living up to his name. You little squirt. Okay, again, that's not very nice, but what would an angry bully say? Yes, indeed, you little squirt. I'll beat you black and blue for this. I'll beat you black and blue for this. This is actually quite an old-fashioned idiom. It's one that I was more likely to hear when I was younger, but who knows, you might hear it occasionally. I'll beat you black and blue, meaning I'll give you a very good beating. I'll cause you a lot of pain. The black and blue idiom refers to bruises. It's quite a gruesome thought. It refers to the pain that someone says they will inflict upon someone else. Black and blue bruises. Not much fun. And Richard, very sensibly realizing that he's a bit out of his depth, he runs with these two menacing characters in hot pursuit. In hot pursuit. Another idiom, hot pursuit. Hot because you're hot when you're running hard, and the heat of the chase partly comes from the fact that your heart starts beating and your body heats up, and there is heat in your movements. So the pursuit, while the pursuit isn't literally hot, there's a metaphorical aspect to it, that the chase is hot, it's heated up. And then, of course, you have the heat of the anger of the two bullies pursuing Richard. Richard fled, yes, into the perilous woods. Angry shouts and heavy breaths. I try to imagine that. So they're shouting. He can hear that angry words, that angry voices behind him as he's running, and heavy panting breaths. Like that. You can just imagine it. I think we've all experienced that. If we've ever run away from someone, or if we've ever been in a race, he kept running. He feared that his heart would burst. Again, anyone who's been in a race or played sports might know that feeling of the heart pounding very fiercely, with a sense, that strange, that frightening sense that your heart will explode if you don't stop running. And here he is into the heart of the perilous woods, right into the middle of the woods, surrounded in the forest by trees. Soon he was exhausted and had to stop. Panting for breath, I just did the impression earlier, I won't do it again. He turned around, expecting to see Nasty Nick and Angry Andy. Yet he saw nothing, the mighty trees of the woods. Here he is. He doesn't have to look like that, but after getting his breath back, Richard wandered alone. The sun was setting and the skies above were growing dark. At first, Richard knew his place. On the one hand, his parents would be angry with him for being here in the perilous woods. But on the other hand, the woods were magnificent. Okay. Yet he saw nothing but the mighty trees of the wood. Mighty. I think we all understand that sense of might and majesty that trees have. I think in a forest, I don't know how recently any of you have been to a forest, there is something mighty and majestic about some of these vast, ancient trees that you might see in a big forest. I think mighty captures that presence, that awesome largeness, the size of the trees, the mighty trees of the woods. The sun was setting and the skies above were growing dark. Yes, I think that my intention in writing that was to provide a sense of menace. It won't be daytime for much longer. Skies were growing dark. Night is coming. And we have this young lad alone in the woods. Is this such a good idea? At first, Richard felt excited to be alone in such a mysterious place. I suppose it would be exciting. Use your imagination. It's a new place. It's a new experience. On the one hand, his parents would be angry with him for being here in the perilous woods. But on the other hand, the woods were magnificent. On the one hand, there's the risk that his parents might tell him off. Why did you go into the perilous woods when we told you not to, explicitly? But on the other hand, the other reality, this is a beautiful place. And he's marveling, he is impressed and moved by the magnificence, the beauty of the woods. Richard breathed in the cool autumn air and felt the cool wind on his face. He remembered that he had a bottle of water in his backpack, which he drank slowly. I just think that captures the reality. He happens to have a bottle of water in his backpack. He's been running very hard. He refreshes himself. That just captures the reality, I think the physical reality of how we might feel after a long run. Cool autumn air, cool wind on his face. Maybe the perilous woods were not so perilous after all. Richard imagined himself as a traveller from long ago, discovering territory that no human had ever seen before. Perhaps people in the future would remember him for his discoveries. Okay, just quickly, after all. After all is a phrase that we use to emphasize how something is different to what we thought it was. Perhaps the woods are not so frightening after all. Perhaps this lesson isn't so boring after all. Perhaps, I don't know, the school day is not so tiring after all. It's a useful thing to add. It usually comes at the end of a sentence. And it's a useful phrase to emphasize a realization, a change. Richard imagined himself as a traveler from long ago, discovering territory that no human had ever seen before. Perhaps people in the future would remember him for his discoveries. This is a hypothetical reality. Richard imagines. So it's not the reality, but this is a young boy with a wonderful imagination, a fertile imagination. And he imagined himself as an explorer, someone finding new territory, making a major discovery for mankind, something for which people will remember him, will remember Richard who discovered this corner of the perilous woods. I think we all, at some point in our lives, might imagine that we are the first person to discover a certain place. Can you think of any time where you might have felt that? Suddenly he heard an owl's haunting call. Okay. Now, owls are very beautiful, mysterious creatures. Their call is very distinctive, easily recognizable. It's a haunting call. I've said haunting. I think that's an appropriate adjective. It captures the slightly sad, mournful sound of their nighttime call. And their sound is something we associate with night. We don't hear them during the day because they are nocturnal. They sleep during the day and they come out at night. So it's night. He had lost track of time and night had fallen. Worse still, Richard had no idea where he was. He did not recognize this part of the perilous woods. He began to panic, feeling his heart thud faster and faster. He continued walking now in fear. Through the corner of his eye, he saw a figure moving quickly through the trees. Oh no, he thought, fearing the worst. Okay, I just draw your attention to a few idioms here. To lose track of time. Again, we've all had this experience. To lose any sense of awareness of how time has passed. Maybe if we're playing with a friend or we're spending time doing something we really enjoy, we might forget that hours have passed. Night had fallen. This is a metaphorical verb. I think it's very poetic. I think it's a beautiful form in English that we have. Nightfall and night falls. It doesn't literally fall from the sky, but it's a metaphor in the sense that night descends, darkness descends as if it's falling from the sky, and the sky that had been blue turns black. Worse still, Richard had no idea where he was. He did not recognize this part of the perilous woods. Yes, let's draw attention to the immediacy of these feelings of panic. How do we feel when we panic? Yes, indeed. I'll draw attention to the heart beating faster and faster, the thud. That's a wonderful. I didn't introduce you to the word onomatopoeic, but onomatopoeic is an adjective meaning that a word, a noun or an adjective sounds like that which it describes. So the word thud, you can imagine, sounds like the noise that your heart might make. Feeling his heart thud faster and faster. Okay, walking in fear, corner of his eye, figure moving quickly through the trees. Okay, this is frightening. Who could that figure be? Again, you could turn this into a horror story. There are ways you could do that. Of course, many frightening stories have been told related to woods, and here we have potential for something frightful. We'll see. Oh no, he thought, fearing the worst. Worst, of course, is superlative, the worst possible outcome. I leave that to your imaginations. Then he felt it, a soft touch on his shoulder, as gentle as a leaf falling from a tree. Richard turned in fright and beheld a woman dressed in a long dress of blue. It was his Aunt Brenda, yet how different she looked. Her skin was darker than Richard had remembered. Her hair was darker than Richard had remembered, her skin brighter, and her blue eyes especially radiant. She put her fingers to her lips, indicating to Richard that he should keep silent. She smiled at him and spoke in a whisper. Follow me, Richard. Then he felt it. Okay. I don't want to use the word then too much. It can be a bit repetitive. But I think it's appropriate here because it captures a change. Then he felt it, a soft touch on his shoulder, as gentle as a leaf. This is a classic simile. As gentle as a leaf. I don't know if you can recall the fall of a leaf falling on your shoulder. What would it feel like? Very soft, very gentle. As gentle as that. Soft touch. It's not a violent touch, it's a soft, gentle touch. Nevertheless, it gives him a fright. A woman dressed in a long dress of blue. Aunt Brenda. Okay. Aunt Brenda, what a surprise. What are you doing here? Her hair was darker than Richard had remembered, her skin brighter, and her blue eyes especially radiant. Okay, he knows her, but she looks different. And here we have the comparative. Her hair was darker than Richard had remembered, her skin brighter than usual. And her blue eyes, okay, she has blue eyes and he knows she has blue eyes, but they are especially radiant, more bright, more intense than he had remembered than when he last saw her. She led him in silence through the woods, past vast and ancient oak trees and beech trees. Richard was confused, but he said nothing. After 10 minutes of wandering, Aunt Brenda led Richard to a clearing in the woods, in which stood a wooden hovel. Come inside, my dear, she said. Don't be scared, Richard. Okay. Wooden hovel. I think hovel's a more interesting word than hut or house. I think hovel captures the bare, simple nature. It's a useful noun. Again, quite an old-fashioned noun, which captures the simplicity of the place. It's not a place where you would necessarily choose to live. I think it's nice to name some of the trees, oak trees and beech trees. It's nice to gives the reader a sense of the variety of trees in the forest. Come inside, my dear. She's kind. My dear, she calls him. My dear, perhaps it isn't always kind, but in this context, she wants to comfort him. She wants to reassure him that she means no harm. He followed his aunt inside, entering a small room with a fireplace and 2 stools standing beside a small wooden table. Where am I, Aunt Brenda? Exclaimed Richard. Oh, your mother didn't tell you, said his aunt cheerfully. I live in the perilous woods at different times of the year. Richard frowned because his mother had never mentioned this. Don't you get scared living out here in the forest, Aunt Brenda? He asked. She smiled wistfully and shook her head. No, I don't. The woods are not as perilous as you were taught to believe. Okay. This is so I wanted to describe this little place, this hovel. It's fairly simple, but it has a fireplace and 2 stools standing beside a small wooden table. So not much to live on. Oh, This is a surprise. I live in the perilous woods at different times of the year. Your mother didn't tell you. Perhaps by saying this, it's a helpful thing for a writer to do. I am your mother's sister. Your mother should have told you about where I live. A nice connection there. Richard frowned. His mother had never mentioned this. How mysterious. Wistfully. Okay, wistfully is an adverb. It's the adverb of wistful. I had to look it up to get the exact definition. So it goes to you're never too old to look something up in a dictionary. It's always good to have a dictionary here. And it just enriches your vocabulary. Wistful, yearningly or mournfully expectant or wishful. Yes, there's something sad about being wistful. Wistfully, perhaps wistfully, regretfully, mournfully. Nobody seems to understand, she implies, that the perilous woods are not perilous. They are, in fact, a very magical, lovely place. Nobody understands her or her unusual lifestyle. Richard looked around the wooden hut that surrounded them. It was very bare, with little to recommend it as a place to stay. He wondered why and how anyone would want to live in a place like this. I saw those two boys who chased you into the forest, said Aunt Brenda. They seemed very unpleasant. Richard nodded. Yes, they are. Nasty Nick and Angry Andy. I hate them. Aunt Brenda smiled. You will neither have to hate nor fear them after this. I will make sure of it. Richard sighed. I'm also a terrible student who finds maths very difficult. Okay, neither nor. Neither nor. An emphasis of a negative emphasis, but here it means something positive. You neither have to hate nor fear. So neither of those things will be necessary. She's promising to change things. She's going to reveal how. Whereupon his aunt laughed, not in a cruel way, but in a way that soothed and comforted him. He laughed too, and she poured out a glass of purple liquid from an ornate ivory bottle. She held out the glass to him and fixed him with her sparkling blue eyes. Drink this, Richard. Richard gingerly took hold of the glass and drank. He had never tasted anything so sweet, yet so refreshing. It cooled him and soothed him like nothing else that he had ever eaten or drunk. He started feeling sleepy and began to panic. How would he get home? Richard tried to fight his sleepiness, but he was soon fast asleep. Okay, just quickly. Ornate. Ornate is a beautiful adjective used to describe something intricate, some intricate design, something beautifully made. The noun ornament is related to the adjective ornate. If something is an ornament, then it is beautiful, precious, somewhere you put somewhere safe so that it doesn't get broken. An ornate ivory bottle. I think this is quite a pretty picture. If you have an ornate glass bottle, an ornate object, it's beautifully carved and crafted. It's something that you'll keep safe, something precious. Okay. Drink this, Richard. Richard gingerly. It's an gingerly. It looks like an adverb, but it's not. Well, yes, it is. Excuse me. He took hold of the glass gingerly in a ginger manner. We don't really use ginger as an adjective. Ginger, we might be describing someone's hair or a smell or a taste or a flavor. But gingerly is acceptable as an adverb. Gingerly, nervously, carefully, with uncertainty. He's not quite sure this is purple liquid. What is it? What's she giving me? He had never tasted anything so sweet. So nothing had tasted like this before, yet so refreshing. So sweet, yet so refreshing. That strange combination of the two. It is an intense experience drinking this liquid. cooled him and soothed him like nothing else. Like nothing else. This is a surreal, magical experience. Okay. He tries to fight his sleepiness, but he's soon fast asleep. Now, everyone, I want to give you 2 minutes to write down what you think will happen. What will be the outcome of the story? Your own ideas. Just before I give you the time, I want you to think about magic. When I wrote this, I was thinking about the legends of King Arthur. I was thinking about Celtic mythology. I was thinking about black magic versus white magic. I was thinking about, yes, maybe I was thinking about Harry Potter as well. Benign forces. Is it benign or is it malign? Is it good or bad? Okay, over to you. 2 minutes. What happens next? Thirty seconds, everyone. Okay. Wow. Okay. Don't worry if you didn't get down everything you wanted. 2 minutes perhaps isn't long enough, but who knows? Maybe you wrote something down which will stay with you, or it might form a seed for something which will grow into something greater. That's why writing things down is important. Just keeping a note of things, and I would love to know what your alternative endings for the story might be. Quite possibly more interesting and more imaginative than the one I will show you now. The alarm bell sounded loud and shrill at 7 o'clock. Richard awoke with a start. He was at home, in his own bed. As he rubbed his eyes, he tried to piece together the events of the night before. Surely it had all been a dream. Oh no, my maths homework, he exclaimed, realizing that he would have to do it at school just before maths class. Okay, awoke with a start. A useful phrase. To awake with a start is to be awoken, perhaps unexpectedly. Surely it has all been a dream. What's going on? He pulled the maths books from his backpack, desperately opening the pages in a hurry, dreading the blank gridded pages for working on. Then he gasped. The mathematics homework had been completed in full, with every calculation, subtraction, multiplication, and geometry question answered perfectly. As Richard ate his breakfast, his mum came into the kitchen. You look very fresh this morning, my dear, she said, smiling. Oh, do I? He replied. I had the weirdest dream last night, Mum. I dreamt that Aunt Brenda lived in a hut in the perilous woods. Mum raised her eyebrows. That's a strange dream. You'll have to tell me about it when you get back from school. I don't want you to be late. Okay. The weirdest dream. The superlative is very useful here. It emphasizes a perception that we might have. The weirdest dream, the strangest dream. Weird is a useful adjective. Weird perhaps means it's stronger than strange. It's something that he really doesn't understand. Mum raised her eyebrows. Well, yeah, I think this is an idiom in a way, but it actually reflects what we do. If you raise your eyebrows, you raise your eyebrows if you're surprised by something, or if you're confused by something, or if you disbelieve something. And it's a useful thing to bring in. It captures someone's character, that his mum often doesn't believe him. She thinks he's making it up. Or does she? Does she perhaps believe more than he thinks he does? Okay. She doesn't want him to be late. I don't want you to be late. As he walked to school that morning, Richard was dazed, but he smiled. What could possibly have happened? As he approached the school gates, he saw other pupils arrive. After about 5 minutes, he saw Nasty Nick and Angry Andy arrive. He no longer felt frightened. Richard walked up to them, but they backed away. He was astonished, for Nasty Nick and Angry Andy had become as timid as mice and were now scared of him. Two things here. What could possibly have happened? This is a rhetorical question. Richard asks this of himself. What could possibly have happened? What on earth happened? Was this really a dream or was it real? I'm confused. How could this make any sense? It's surreal, it's strange. It doesn't make any sense. A rhetorical question doesn't require an answer. We often use rhetorical questions for speeches. If we want to emphasize a point, it can be phrased as a question. Here, it's him thinking deeply to himself. What could possibly have happened? And he's changed. So something definitely has happened. He was astonished, for Nasty Nick and Angry Andy had become as timid as mice. A good simile here, a strong simile, as timid as mice. Timid, it's a strong adjective. Timid, if you're timid, if you've ever seen mice in the house, they run away. They look, and their demeanor and their persona is fearful. They are small creatures. They are fearful of larger creatures, and they will run away if you approach them. Nasty Nick and Angry Andy, these two frightening bullies, have become like mice. They're frightened of him. They back away from him as though they're mice scared of a cat. What could possibly have happened? Richard went up to Mr. Pearson's classroom for the start of class. Ah, good morning, Richard, said Mr. Pearson. You needn't worry. I'm not expecting any miracles. Of course not, sir, replied Richard. I just did my best. He handed his exercise book over to Mr. Pearson. He saw the disbelief and confusion on Mr. Pearson's face and had to stop himself from laughing. Hey, look, everyone, said Jessica, a particularly noisy girl. Who's she? Richard turned to the window and beheld Aunt Brenda. She smiled at him, and her blue eyes dazzled in the morning sunshine. Just quickly. I wanted to capture Mr. Pearson's character here. He's a bit sarcastic. He's not particularly nice. You needn't worry. I'm not expecting any miracles. I know how bad you are at this subject. Of course not, sir. Richard is a polite lad. I just did my best. Gives him the exercise book. Disbelief and confusion. Well, that'll teach Mr. Pearson a lesson for being unfair and sarcastic. Another character, Jessica. I just chose a name. You could make it a young boy. It doesn't matter who it is. Who's she? She notices. And there's Aunt Brenda. She smiles and her blue eyes dazzle in the morning sunshine. So that's the end of my story. It's not a bang of an ending. Perhaps you all imagined and thought of endings which were vastly more dramatic than that. It's quite a gentle ending. What I wanted to convey was that Aunt Brenda is a kind figure, someone who is watching over him, perhaps like a guardian angel. So let's just recap over what in this story, I have tried to teach you about a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it is a story told in the third person from the point of view of a boy. It could be a girl, as I said, it could be he or she. That's a third person narrative. I have attempted to show you a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's to say, a young boy in trouble, leaving school with homework he's worried about. The middle, chased into the forest by the bullies, meeting his mysterious aunt, and the end with his homework and his troubles being resolved. The beginning, the middle, and the end. Of course, as you get older, you'll get better at developing more complex, more rich plots and storylines. This is a very basic one, which I think is just a helpful way to start, a helpful thing to think about. And just finally, always useful to think about the words you use. I'm going to emphasize again, always useful to have a dictionary, just so you can have interesting, nice words to use to make the story read more interestingly. Think about why you're using a word. Think about how many times you've used it. Have I, at any point in this narrative, repeated words perhaps where I didn't need to? Quite possibly. Maybe you can perfect what I've done. Well, thank you everyone for your attention. It's been wonderful talking to you. And I hope that I have in some way contributed to some ideas that you might have. And I look forward to potentially reading some of your wonderful creative writing, your own personal creative writing. And wish you a very happy weekend. Bye from me.